Welcome to the WeHa.com Roundtable. I'm John Lyons, joined as always by Ronnie Newton, the managing editor of WeHa.com.
Thanks for joining us.
While it might come as a surprise to many, election season is already heating up here in West Hartford, with candidates for municipal offices now making their cases to the voters and to the town committee leadership. The town committees will meet later this week to have their local conventions and to endorse the candidates running for office. Recently, 4 members of the Republican Party here in town sent shockwaves to the community when they announced that they were leaving the GOP and joining the party that successfully brought Lowell Weicker to office. Thus, the A Connecticut Party suddenly had 4 new members. Among the 4 was the then chair of the town Republican Committee, Mark Merritt, who joins us tonight, along with the then minority council leader, Lee Gold, who has to attend a budget meeting tonight and will be unable to join us. Our other 2 guests are Rick Bush, who ran for town council 2 years ago as a Republican, and Roni Rodman, who is the COO of MedSpa here in town. We have a lot to discuss. I should mention that next week, Ronnie and I will be inviting all of the candidates running for municipal office on to discuss their platform positions, so they too will have their chance with us. We will touch on this with the 3 folks here tonight to ensure equity, but let's kick off with a little history from each about their relationship with the GOP and what led to their decision to leave the party. So I guess, Mark, let me start with you, because I think we talked, you like me are second generation, at least, Republican. I think you talked about your dad was very active in the party, is that correct?
No, actually my dad was a lifelong Democrat.
Oh, there we go.
In Rhode Island. So I've gone the other route for the 30 plus years as a Republican, growing up in Rhode Island. So it's been an interesting conversation at family dinners. It's
I think of the show Family Ties with Alex Keaton, and he was the Republican, his parents were kind of the liberal, hippie Democrat. So it must have been some interesting dinner conversation.
It has been over the last 30 years, it has.
So, but to me, joining a political party is not something somebody should take lightly. I'm sure you didn't take it lightly. And so I want to talk about a little bit what went into your decision and maybe what you felt emotionally as you made the decision to transition from the GOP to a Connecticut Party.
Yes, when we looked at what was transpiring both at a national and then also state level, one of the things that really held to me throughout the last 30 years as being a Republican is, the old term, I was a Yankee Republican. I'm a very fiscal, conservative individual, but I was moderate to liberal on some social issues. And so when I looked at being part of the party recently in the last couple of years, it really challenged me as to where we were going as an organization. And then over the last couple of years, trying to help change the view of the West Hartford Republican Town Committee and helping provide an alternative voice and ideas and solutions that could be a platform for voters in our community to have something to really chew on, so to speak, and then to be able to have something to vote on. What led me to drop the mic, so to speak, and look at an alternative is what is the right platform for us, being a moderate, looking at things from a holistic lens perspective, and how do we get things accomplished. And that was something I don't think I felt truly able to do. And Lee and I both talked about it at length about it, and then we talked to Rick and Ronnie too along the way as to what platform really spoke to us. And I think if you look back 30 years ago, the A Connecticut Party that Lowell Weicker and Uni Scroark and others that started it, there was a lot of similarities there 30 years ago. And then their whole idea then was, let's talk about the individuals, let's talk about the ideas and solutions, let's get things done, but let's not worry about what letters next to their names when they're on the ballot. And that really spoke to us as to what we can try to accomplish here in West Hartford. What can we do to look for the future? How do we modernize? How do we look at other alternatives and have a conversation about some of the solutions that we really need to really look at as a community and have the conversation about it and not just be polarized by any ideology. So that's kind of what led me to this, and also the other stuff nationally that was happening. It just really put a thought in my mind is why, and why is it important for me to give back to the community, and then what really stands out.
I want to ask one quick question before we kind of get into some of the specifics about your decision, but did you, has a Connecticut Party been officially reformed? I understand you had to get a certain number of signatures to reignite it or to renew it because it had not been active.
It has been, I guess, inactive would be a good term. So I did file the proper forms to get it recognized as a campaign committee, and as of today, we have submitted our signed petitions to be on the ballot for November 2nd. And so right now, those are all in Essie's hands in the town clerk's office to review. So those are all handed in today.
Now, I want to get to the other two guests, but how many candidates do you have at this point on your ticket?
So right now, we have 4 running for town council. We are in conversations. We did file also for Board of Ed, and we are looking to hopefully secure an individual that will run with us on the Board of Ed, for the Board of Ed.
So let's, Roni, let's post you. Now, there's 2 Ronnies in the studio. Roni with one end.
This is so rare.
It's
very rare.
Not often you see that, but Roni, now you have not been in the political spotlight in town. You run a business here in town, Med Spa, successfully, I might add. And,
Thank you.
And so, how did you get roped into this? Because you're kind of a different background. Rick's been a little bit politically active. Mark's been politically active, but you, at least visibly, you haven't been. Maybe behind the scenes. Were you on the Republican committee? Talk to us a little bit about that.
Actually, no. So I, believe it or not, have a degree in political science. And then my whole goal was to run for office. But, you know, my life happened, grad school happened, kids happened. It just never was the right time. And so I was able to, I held a lot of positions, like on the West Hartford Youth Football League. I'm PTO president over at King Philip now. So a lot of things maybe behind the scenes that were more localized. And then when I talked to Mark and Lee, they actually approached me, and this is what I've always wanted to do. I've always wanted to run for office, and I had actually met with the mayor years ago to discuss how to get more involved, and you know, right timing's everything. And so the ideas for A Connecticut Party were there. It was exactly my thought process, and it's like they were reading my mind as to how to be involved, and it just was perfect timing. So I'm not the typical, but I also got sick of everyone saying they wanted to change things and not do anything themselves, so.
We do hear that a lot. That
All the time.
People complain. We see it on our Facebook page. You know, Roni will post a political story, and people will complain, but they're not
They don't
active
do
in the
anything.
process.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. And so I'm kind of the person where if I don't like something being done, I find a way to fix it, and that's what I've done the entire time I've lived here.
Tell us a little bit about your history. Were you lifelong Republican? Do you come from a family of Republicans, or you know, was it a painful decision? Was it a difficult decision to switch, or did it come a little more naturally to you?
It came more naturally because parents are split down the middle. Mom has passed away, but my mom was Democrat, my dad was Republican, and live in Ohio. So it was an interesting conversation. And no, I was Democrat up to a couple years ago and split because as I got older, my views kind of changed, and I wanted to see the Republican Party at that point kind of fit my views. But then I was so sick of us and them and voting party lines. I'm like, you should vote for the right person for the right job. It shouldn't be based on what letters after their name. And so again, this was exactly right place, right time, and it just kind of the philosophy just is exactly what I was thinking. But the A Connecticut Party just verbalized what I was thinking. And so it was great. So it's not, I do not have the typical route. I went all the way around, and so very different. I've lived a lot of different places, done a lot of different volunteer work, and then this just felt right.
I should stop to explain because I think people trip on it. It is called A Connecticut Party. And there's a specific reason, which Mark, I'll let you get into. I quizzed you guys on it before, and everybody knew the answer. So Mark, tell us about why it's called the A Connecticut Party.
And great thinking 30 years ago. So why recreate the wheel? A Connecticut Party means A, you're at the top of the ballot. So when they created the A Connecticut Party 30 years ago, the reason why to upset the apple cart between the Democrats and Republicans is why not get on the top of the ballot and created the party for A Connecticut Party.
I did not know that.
And the A Connecticut Party was, and a candidate for governor was, and he won.
Lowell Weicker,
he won.
Yeah,
So.
and then Eunice Groark also was part of that later on, and she had held some offices there. And then if you looked at Joe Lieberman, was also, I believe, early on part of that organization as well. So, yeah, great history there. Great Mavericks, great independent streak.
And is it the A Connecticut Party or just A Connecticut Party?
A Connecticut Party.
Okay, all right.
Can get a little confusing. So
Yeah, it is
Yeah,
confusing.
I tried to be very careful. I was careful when I scripted the intro because I didn't want to misspeak and misquote the party. So, Rick, you and I have talked. We had you on the big election night special. It was a lot of fun. We got to talk about MTC, which I want to get into a little bit later tonight. But you know, I think my sense is you have a little bit more of an independent streak. You know, I know we've talked and you've considered running again, and I sense that streak from you. Talk to me about your history. You're, you know, with the Republican Party. You know, where you stand, what helped in your decision to join the group here?
So I appreciate the question. It's funny that you mentioned Family Ties earlier in the show, is because ultimately when I was a kid, I was one of my favorite shows to watch, and I really admired Michael J. Fox and his entrepreneurial spirit. I'm an independent business person. I always considered myself as an entrepreneur, and when I was 18 and I had an opportunity to vote, I was like Ronald Reagan and Michael J. Fox, and that's what I am, you know. And I related to that. I felt that it was who I was, and it spoke to me as a person. And you know, I'm as I said, I'm an independent business person. I work for myself, and I think that there's a lot of people who are independent business people who understand that they want a limit to government regulation in their lives. And I think that's one of the things that the Republican Party always held for me, was that it was for smaller government and less intrusion into people's lives, you know, sort of let people be who they want to be. You know, have a good policies and good plans, and you know, be fiscally conservative and you know, but there's lines that I draw in my personal life. So I have a family member, my sister-in-law is special needs. So I am intimately involved and aware of the social welfare system and how necessary it is for our citizens and how it improves our society. So as I start to, you know, have those types of thoughts in my head, is that Republican or Democrat? I'm not really sure. I also am a housing provider in Connecticut. So I have rental properties, and I have many tenants and many people who are on Section 8, who are applying to the new Unite CT program, who are getting you know, assistance. And I see how important that is. I mean, those are critically important infrastructure systems that benefit everybody. They benefit the rich people as much, if not more, than they benefit the poor people. Because you can't have a functioning society if there's people that are falling off the margins. So you know, where's the line? I've spent the last 2 years going, what's a Democrat? What's a Republican? Where's that line? And I definitely am pretty close to the center on those things. And you know, I felt that the way that the Republican Party has moved over the last, you know, really the last year, but it didn't really reflect who I am as a person. I don't subscribe to many of the things that have occurred, and I don't buy into the dogma and the propaganda that's out there, and that's not who I am. And I'm a problem solver. I like to get things done. And if I run for an office and I have no chance of winning because I'm in a Democratic town and I have an R in front of my name, people aren't getting to learn about Rick Bush. They're not learning who I am, what I stand for, what problems I'm going to solve, what agendas I want to further. And so I believe that A Connecticut Party really speaks to me, and as it does to the other candidates, as to how this is the party that's actually going to make change, get things done, not be the party of no, and not be the party that, you know, all this propaganda. It's just not how I see myself, and it's not how I see my fellow candidates.
So let's talk a little bit about, and I'm going to use the acronym ACP, if that's okay with you guys. Okay.
As long as AC Peterson's down on Park Road.
Yeah, exactly. Although maybe after this but anyway, how does, Rick, to your point, how does ACP differ from the GOP, and how does it differ from the Democrats? And I'm going to push back before you answer the question, because I don't want you to think I'm being argumentative. You know, there are extremes on both parties, with both parties. And, you know, I think a lot of Republicans, certainly in the Northeast, feel they are centrists. And I agree with Democrats. I'm a member of the DTC here in town, so I see it firsthand. Talk to me, how does ACP differ? And then some of the challenges, and can be frustrations, is fundraising. I mean, I bet you I've gotten 15 fundraising emails since I've been sitting in the studio from various parties. And I try to subscribe to them all because I want to see what's going on both sides and what's being said on both sides. How do you survive as kind of the tiny player without that fundraising arm? So, big question. Mark, we'll start with you on that.
On the fundraising, or just in general, or how we differ?
Talk a little bit how you differ.
I want to hear how I want to hear a lot about how you differ.
So I'm going to start off, and I'm going to give you a little snippet there, but I really would like to hear from Roni and Rick on this one. So you hit it right on the nail on the head. So you've got two wings of each party that have the megaphone right now, and both nationally and some other things that are going on. So what we've looked at is, what about the folks that are more moderate, whether you're a moderate Democrat, moderate Republican, somebody that's unaffiliated. And if you look at the demographics of our town, there's a large portion of our electorate that is kind of unaffiliated and moderate
Right here.
Democrats, right? And so
Gotta be.
I am now too as well. But when you look at it, is how can we come up with a common sense approach to how do we get things done? You know, you can't have polarizing conversations here, but at the end of the day, our fellow residents and our neighbors want to get things done and want things to change, whether it is quality of life initiatives, whether it's fiscal responsibility, whether it's economic and safety and security and some of those type of things. But how do we have a conversation? You and I have different perspectives, but how can we come together? And I used the quote before about Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan, since you brought up Michael J. Fox and Ronald Reagan, is they sat down and had talked things through. All right, how do we get there? Here's what I want, this is what I want, and how do we get to the middle to actually get what the people want? That's kind of what we wanted to see differ. There are liberal, progressive items that are coming up, and we want to be that moderate voice and have that conversation about what's best for the town. And that's kind of why the differentiating point is we're talking to the folks that are in the middle. All right, where do you stand? We want fiscal conservative, but you want things done and the value for the tax dollars that we're getting. And so that's kind of how do we get there? And I think the St. Bridget School is another example of how we can come together and create a community that is multi-generational and a part of town that is screaming for more development and modernizing. And so how do we come up with more ideas like that, whether it's at the Yukon property, whether it's strategic consolidation for some other buildings, and talked last night about what aspect of it, whether it's the schools, helping them out, giving more resources, or providing more resources for the police and fire department. And so we can talk about that more different. But that's how we feel we're going to be different, is coming up with solutions, the ideas, and then how do we get it done? And
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've noticed, so even though I ran 2 years ago, I was not elected, I still participated in the process. And I think that's one of the things that, if anybody's watching or if anybody's interested in politics, you don't have to be an elected official to affect change in your community. You can just be an involved citizen and go to the town council meetings and listen to the agenda items. You can speak at any meeting and you can influence policy as a citizen. And I think that ultimately the reason that our party is going to be successful is because we don't have a party line to toe. Right? We don't have a bunch of people with some agenda that's not our agenda. And I have to say that, as you go through life and you make your circles of friends and you meet people and you have these commonalities, I mean, I couldn't be more pleased and proud to be associated with the people that I'm running with. We all have very similar mindsets. We all care about West Hartford. We want to get the best thing done for the town. And we're not going to go in, as you asked what's the difference between A Connecticut Party and the Republican Party, because that's where we were before, and it's important that we understand that. In town, there's a sort of I don't know what to say, how to say it, but the Republicans have been classified as the party of no in West Hartford. And what I've learned is that if you're outnumbered in an argument, you're not going to change everybody's mind and win the argument. What you're going to do is you're going to say, well, did you think about it this way? Have you given consideration to this perspective? Maybe you could include some of these ideas into the solution. And that's what I don't see coming from the current Republican Party in West Hartford. As I listen to the town council meetings and listen to the councilors speak about the issues, I don't hear them saying, well, I brought up this and for the record, I wanted everyone to know that this was my position. They're just more sort of opposed. And I think that as a group and the way that we all communicate together and the ideas that we talk about in our meetings are very progressive for the town. They're very, we want the town to grow. We want our tax dollars to support the infrastructure for our kids, for our senior citizens, for everybody. And I think that we're not afraid to make decisions that maybe spend a little bit of money or maybe cut the budget. We're not going to be the party of no, and we're not going to be the party of spend. We're going to be the moderate voice in the middle that works together to solve the problem.
And we have seen Lee, who was the minority leader on the town council, not necessarily vote with the other Republicans. He's kind of had that independent streak all along. often voting with the Democratic majority, but not always. It just really kind of depends on the issue. Is that the kind of thing that you would see? Like sometimes you might agree and you're not just going to vote no for the sake of voting no.
Absolutely. I mean, that's hitting the nail right on the head. Is we're gonna take our experience, which is fairly vast. If you take the net sum of our experiences in life, our business owners and property owners and business and just people who have lived full lives and have a good standing in the community, we have good opinions. We have smart opinions. We have experienced opinions, and we're going to use our experience to offer information and alternatives.
And I think that's part of why, and I'm not going to speak for you, but I'd like you to hear from you, is why Roni, I think, was attracted to what we were trying to accomplish here, and having some more of that independent streak, and looking at the issues and how does it benefit as a whole. I think that's kind of what the conversations we've had.
Well, you get to the point where, you look, I'm in every mom's group. I'm with, my kids range in age from 21 to 13. So you hear, at the baseball fields, at the football fields, of what all the concerns are. And I think sometimes that's lost when you're sitting in a town council meeting and sometimes it's just listening to people talk and getting nothing done. And, I think most of it is listening to people and seeing what the community needs and the community wants. Because what I think they might want might not be what they want or what they need. And a lot of times just listening and bringing it to this group, who's great because we all listen to each other, and figuring out a solution of how to make it viable for the community. And like we said, we want our kids to go to college and come back home. We want them to come back here. Like we just, during COVID, we redid my backyard. And so now all my older son's friends want to come to my house because it's fun. You want all these kids to go to college and come back to West Hartford and live here and be productive here. You want to be that cool backyard, and you want to make sure that they have a place to come back to. And if we don't change and progress, they're not going to go somewhere else. Businesses aren't going to come in here, and you need to be relevant. And I think that's really important. And I think that the nice thing about this group is we respect each other and we listen to each other. And right. It's not, well, we're the A Connecticut Party and we have to vote this way. No, it's we listen to each other and figure out what's best for the town and go from there.
And the collaboration that we've had on our pillars and our platform that will be launched now that we finalized our logo as of today, which took the longest out
sometimes
of
that
everything.
can take the longest.
It has taken the longest. So, which I like. And let me get back to your comment or question about fundraising, right? Not having the big parties behind you and everything else. What I'm really pleased about is we did file our June filing with the town clerk's office, and since then we've actually doubled that number. So there are people that's one aspect of the fundraising, but I will tell you that the second aspect of what I've found and witnessed too with walking the dog and being around the neighborhoods is the amount of people that have come up to us, whether they are in their early 20s, early 30s, and folks that are in the 50s, 60s, actually recognizing that they feel comfortable now that they have an opportunity to have a different, a third party, give us something, give us some different ideas, giving us a choice. The two-party system, is one of those things where it's either or, and then we don't get the people that come out and vote. So we have a really robust population that come out and vote, and we always get ranked for that. But now if you have a third party and a different option and vision and views, now we're hoping that we have more people come out and vote. Not just the 13,900 people, but let's get 25,000 people to actually come out and vote in this municipal election, because you really do have a choice this time. It's not just one party or the other. You have an actual third party that can provide some solutions and action. But so fundraising, we're seeing the little dollar amounts. We're doing that. We already have started fundraising, and then we're, like I said, we've doubled that amount. We're in 5 digits already.
Are you getting support statewide as well?
We have been getting some. Recently, we had a couple of statewide. We've gotten some donations out of state, which is very interesting. Mm-hmm. We've had some people call and reach out to us, and we're getting a lot of donations now in West Hartford. Mm-hmm. And we just actually started doing all of that active campaigning, fundraising in the last couple of weeks.
I could just follow up on that quickly. I think the support that we've gotten has been shocking. I have told pretty much everybody I know what I'm doing, and I've had people from both sides of the aisle come out and say, congratulations, we're really proud of you, how you're doing this. And I mean, there's a huge need. I think we're filling a need in this town for this choice, because there are so many people who voted in the last election strictly along party lines, because that they didn't pay enough attention to the substance of the debates. They just saw the letter, and that was what they did. But now all of a sudden, there's like, wait a minute, what's this third option that I have? And I think that we provide something that people are very attracted to. That the support has been overwhelming from all sorts of people.
So Mark, a dicey question for you, but I have to ask it. You headed up the RTC until probably 45 days ago or whatever it was.
May.
60 days ago when you made the announcement. Did you approach the other Republicans who either sit in office, Board of Ed, Council, or other officers on the RTC about what your thought process was at the time? And if so, what'd you hear back? What was the feedback?
Well, one of them I did, who is now our treasurer, Ari Shell, who came over and joined us as well. I don't think it was a real big surprise. I didn't really have we've had philosophical conversations about being more moderate and going more center on items and trying to bridge the gap. So I didn't really officially have official conversations with individuals as it relates to the leadership that I had on my team, maybe a couple here or there, but it was widely known that I was more moderate. Some people left because they didn't like the fact that I was more moderate, that I recognized the Biden-Harris, 3 weeks when it was officially, well, I guess not officially, whatever you want to call it that. Recognize it. Now let's move on. Let's work together on trying to do some stuff. So they shouldn't have been surprised. They're probably shocked that I did that. And it was just one of those things that was it was a gut punch. And I had to take a look back and what do I want to tell my kids, my 23-year-old, my 19-year-old, my 16-year-old, what do you stand for? And that's, I think, the noise behind everything. And if I want to give back to the community, what's the best platform for me to be able to execute that on? So there is a vision for them to come back, even though I have handed now back at the House for a short period of time, hopefully.
Well, I think you had an important issue. And, Roni and I, we don't delve into the national stuff too often, but and again, it's Lee Gold's quotes in the news story that came out back in May that WeHow.com put out. But he talked a lot about the breaking points. He talked a lot about the January 6th insurrection, the big lie. What's going on?
And then Liz Cheney.
Yeah, and then the Liz Cheney point.
being
Yeah,
the final
and
straw.
her getting kicked out of her committee or the third position in the House. What is? I don't know. I'm trying to ask this question. I'm trying not to be judgmental, but what is the thought process? You guys were Republicans a long time. I was a Republican a long time. My dad was a hardcore Republican. Ronald Reagan was a Republican who I respected.
Am I allowed to say I was too?
Yeah.
Yes.
And,
I'm
but I say
unaffiliated.
this for a reason because
Need to be.
I hope to God, I'm glad my dad's dead. I said this the other day to my wife. I said, I'm glad my father's dead to not see what's happening in the Republican Party right now. And Reagan must be turning in his grave. How come people can't see through the big lie? How come they can't see through some of the nonsense that's going on, some of the things that are being told? I mean, I'm going to talk about Marjorie Taylor Greene. I shouldn't even mention her name on air, but in March she posted 2 tweets. Donald Trump is saving America. He pushed the I want to make sure I use the term right, the all of government approach. He developed the vaccine. He oversaw that. And you know what? I agree. God bless Trump. He oversaw that. A month ago, she posted, "Don't trust the vaccines. They're going to bang on your door and force you to take it." I mean, she blatantly flip-flopped. And how are these people going to justify it? How are they going to justify it against history? What are you seeing that, frankly, I agree with that others are just not able to see?
That's
That's not for a question.
That's a very
that's
tough
a great
question,
question.
John.
So
You can tell him that's not the purpose of our conversation.
Yeah, no, I understand, but you talk about it in the
we did-
press release, and I think
it's fair game.
It contributed to you leaving the party.
did.
It's probably the reason why you left the party. These things.
So, yes. So there were some policies that we kind of agreed with, or I did personally, right? So I will let Roni and Rick answer that question for themselves from what Lee and I talked about and what kind of were the tipping points for this. And Dawn Ennis from yesterday's, sorry, I'm going to give her a plug because we were on her show last night.
By all means.
So she blatantly asked, would I have ever gone to the Stop the Steal rally? And I blatantly said, without hesitation, absolutely not. Right? So at that particular point in time, then it all transpired from there. And so some of the things that happened, Liz Cheney, very conservative. She's very conservative. And a lot of the policies on a conservative basis, when it came to social issues, we probably wouldn't agree on.
Right.
But what she stood for was on principle. And so that was the tipping point on standing on principle on something that was, 59 lawsuits were filed. All of them were rejected, except for one minor one that went through. But all of that was done. And so that was kind of me personally. When you take a stand for somebody that is actually speaking the truth, speaking from her heart, and understands that she does not believe this is happening or should have happened, she should have stayed. That's a leadership position. And for them to move her off of that from leadership position said a lot about leadership and the character of leadership. Part of about me is I look at, and I do a lot of reading, a lot of history, so whether it's Teddy Roosevelt and you look at all the other people that made tough choices, whether it was the Bushes, whether it was Reagan and some of the other stuff, they had character, they stood up for some things, but you knew where they stood, and so own it. And that was kind of one of the things, just own it. And they didn't own it, and Marjorie Taylor Greene, I'm people of Georgia, they voted for her, can't do anything about it. I'm disappointed that there is somebody there that is anti-Semitic, that is in Congress like that, and so I'm on the Jewish Community Relations Council, and so I'm actively involved in talking about some of those issues, and that really hits home to me, right? So those are coming to other issues that probably is not widely known that also factored into my decision as to what was transpiring. So we did quote it, we did say it, and that there were factors, and then everything else transpired from there.
And again, I went there really because you guys touched on it in the press release. I don't want you to think I was trying to put you on the spot, but my only comment, subject of comment is history is pretty harsh, and history, 50 years from now, I mean, I'll be long gone, but 50 years from now, I'd love to know what the textbooks are going to say about all of this, because I put in a note here and I showed it to Ronnie earlier. Talk about AOC, who is, very left. She calls herself a socialist, but that's a difference of opinion on the issues. We're fighting over issues now. But to say COVID is fake or was caused by 5G or the vaccines don't work when 3 months ago you said it is, that's what I really struggle
John,
with.
this is a particularly important question, and I think it speaks to more than us. We live in the United States of America, and we have an experiment called democracy.
Yeah.
And we're 200 and something years into it. There's a lot on the line here.
Yeah.
And whether we're Republicans or Democrats or whatever, we're all Americans. We all need to understand that our democracy is under attack by propaganda and false narratives that are being pushed by somebody who calls himself a Republican, who in my opinion is not a Republican. He has usurped power, and he's created a faction of Americans to be loyal to an individual instead of the idea of our country. I have a lot of friends who are Republicans. I have a lot of friends who voted for Donald Trump. It's very difficult when I interact with them. We don't bring that stuff up. But the fact of the matter is if we don't understand as a group, all of us as a group, that our institutions are under attack at all levels. Our churches, our businesses, our government, our newspapers, the institutions that we have held sacred as Americans that provide us with who we are as people are being challenged at the most basic level. And we're being divided by a demagogue who is creating a false narrative. And unfortunately, the problem is that it's such a sensitive issue. Once you buy into it, once you subscribe to that narrative, it's an embarrassing proposition to say, "Oh, I was wrong," and and then to back out. So, I think that there's people now who are in it, who are bought into it, and there's a lot of disenfranchised people. And you look at Connecticut, and we're all lucky to live in Connecticut, I think. I think Connecticut's a great state.
Yep.
And couldn't be more lucky to live in West Hartford. But as you look
Cool
at
backyard. I love that.
Yeah.
I'm using that.
Available for weddings. There's a lot of disenfranchised people who feel that this is something where they can rise up. And it's really just dividing us. We're not solving any problems. We're not meeting at the table and saying, how do we solve that immigration problem? What's the real solution? Because it's not build a wall or let them in. There's a medium in there.
Right.
And what group of people is organizing on a national level and bringing everyone to the table and solving that problem? Right? That's what I don't see happening. And that's what frustrates me as a person, is that there's a solution and most of the people are going to be happy with it, but a lot of the people aren't. And that's what our country is about. It's majority rule. You go in, you have a discussion, you come up with the best idea that you can as a human being.
Yeah.
I mean, we're all flawed. We all are weak in our own way. But as a group, we're strong. We act together, we come together, and we try to do what's best for our town, our state, and our nation. And we leave our partisanship at the door. We walk in and we're all people. And that's really, I think that's the most important thing that we really need to take away from this. And what we have done is we have said, listen, we're going to shed our affiliation, and we're going to be independent, individual, free-thinking individuals who are going to come to the table with enthusiasm, with energy, with experience, and with the desire to help to solve the problems and make real change.
So I wrote a note down here. Why didn't a Connecticut party catch on 30 or so years ago when Lowell Weicker ran for governor? And did it really take this kind of assault on our democracy and the growing rift between the two existing parties to create an atmosphere that's ripe for a third party?
I think so. I mean, I don't know the history, all that history behind what happened and how it, I'm not going to say dissolved, but just went into dormant stage. But there was a lot that came, when we had that announcement back in May, I fielded about 6 or 7 calls from people that were working on that campaign or part of that committee in the party then, and they were just saying that this is the perfect time for an option like this. And sometimes it is timing. I use the phrase, a blind squirrel gets a nut every once in a while. So could get lucky, and how does it catch fire?
I
with doing
also
that
think that, like, with us right now, and we've had these discussions too, is that, maybe that they weren't so forward-thinking and didn't know what next generations, because we're like, how do we keep this going? This is great that we're all running this time, but what's going to happen the next election? So it's really making sure that is a party that stays around, that its ideals are perpetuated, and that, it's just not a one-off, and that it'll be here for a while.
Have you had other people from other communities who wish to join the party? Has it kind of caught on a grassroots level yet statewide, or?
Lee has had some conversations with other folks from other towns, and I think it's just kind of see how this experiment goes here in West Hartford. See what kind of we can mount and have the 4 of us get elected in November. I think that would be, very, very game changer. A game changer, sorry.
Lot of eyes on you. So, Roni, I'm going to hand off to you because we want to get into some of the issues now, local issues. We're done beating the national stuff to death here. Let's talk about some of the local issues. So, Roni, you want to take it?
Yeah, sure. And actually, Mark kind of touched on 1 or 2 of those before, but there are a lot of big development opportunities West Hartford's looking at in the next term, really. There's the Elmwood Community Center, Cultural Center, in the former St. Bridget School, which the town council just authorized the purchase of last week. There's the opportunity to redevelop the area where the Children's Museum is now. There's, of course, whatever is going on with the former Yukon campus, which is in the process of being sold to a secret developer. There's the transit-oriented development zone. That's going to be a pretty big decision that the town council has looking forward. And then there's the use of the American Rescue Plan funds, which presents the town with really a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to maybe take care of some infrastructure items, maybe create some new initiatives that can really transform the town. Any thoughts on some creative ideas for those projects? That's a huge question.
That is a huge question. We should
It is
break it down line
too
by
big a
line.
question.
I can break it down. I had a conversation today with Dwayne Martin regarding the money from the federal government, and I think it's somewhere in the ballpark of $27 million that the town is going to.
More. When you add it up, it's 35 million.
So anybody who knows me knows that I got involved in politics because of the sewer system and the sanitary sewer and the storm sewer. And there's a really large project in town that really needs to be funded that is very not sexy. It is not glamorous. It's the sewer system. And let me tell you, it's a very important, very expensive project. And I was talking with Dwayne today out at a property in West Hartford that every time there's a heavy rain, the manhole, the giant heavy steel 120 shoots off, and sewage, this 24 inches around, pumps out of this manhole
Where?
Wow, where's that?
in West Hartford right into Trout Brook.
Wow.
Well, we're live. Go ahead.
It's
Tell
on,
them where it is.
Well, it's on the right of way on the side of Trout Brook, between Trout Brook and on the corner of Trout Brook and Asylum. So there's a right of way where the main sewer line goes, and one of the neighbors called me. So I am a commissioner of the MDC, and when there's an issue in town, I get the phone calls a lot of times or the emails. And I went out, I met with the individual, and I saw the effluence in process. I mean, let me tell you, it's shocking. It's shocking.
Now, Rick, let me interrupt, just for those watching who don't
Yep.
know MDC or what their purview is. Could you give us 10
Yeah.
seconds on that, and then we'll get back to
Certainly.
this.
So the MDC is the Metropolitan District Commission, and they are responsible to provide drinking water for 8-member towns and also for sewer for some towns that they, most of the towns actually, there's member towns. I'm not going to list them all. Then there's also commissioners that are elected by each member town to serve on the board of directors, and we deal with all of the day-to-day operations and of the oversight of a lot of the operations. So we get to see what goes on and what decisions are being made and where the money's being spent and the budgets and all that sort of stuff. So the MDC is an extremely well-run organization from an outsider's perspective. Even though I'm on the board of directors, I'm an outsider. I'm just a citizen member of being able to oversee what's going on.
So tell us, because we're talking about the funding that West Hartford has. Sewage falls under MDC purview. Did MDC also get money from the government, COVID relief money from the
So
government?
we're talking about storm sewer. So this is
so
the
that's
problem.
town.
That's
Okay.
the town.
Okay.
So there's two separate things. It's really important to clarify the difference between the two. When you run your drains in your water and you flush your toilet and take a shower, it goes into the sanitary sewer. When it rains, it goes into the storm sewer. And in West Hartford, there's an inflow of stormwater that goes into the sanitary sewer when it rains because of a lot of reasons. And I explain this, that every house in West Hartford, the foundation has a perimeter drain and everybody has a square pit in their basement. And the water, when the water table rises, instead of going into your basement, it goes around the perimeter drain into that pit and through a 4-inch pipe out into the sanitary sewer. So on a regular day, the sewage treatment plant in Hartford treats 8 million gallons of sewage. When there's a heavy rain event, they treat 69 million gallons.
Wow.
Right, so it's a massive.
Like every day this month.
Right.
Yeah, it's been a wet July. Wettest
Yeah.
July on record to this point so far.
And so it doesn't just come out of this big manhole. It goes into people's basements. Well, first of all, that manhole goes into Trout Brook. So, I mean, if you,
You don't
want
want
to
to be
talk,
catching fish
so let
there.
me-
you don't want to be going into Trout Brook.
No, I'm actually I think you know from our previous conversation, I was pretty fascinated by this stuff and your
Yeah.
role on the MDC. So, but you say raw sewage, but it's the town sewage. It's not untreated human waste.
Incorrect.
Okay, so how are the two intermingling?
Because through people's homes, the water table rises, the water goes through the perimeter drains and drains out through the 4-inch line where our sewage goes when we flush the toilet.
It's
It
because
goes
those
to
are
the
old
sa-
systems, right?
Okay.
And it's not really supposed to happen that
It's
way.
not supposed
but
to. It depends how the system was designed.
Yeah.
So the system in West Hartford is on average 100 years old. I think 108
It's
in
got to
some
be.
places.
Yeah, it's all lead, right?
No. There's no lead.
Okay,
There's no lead.
okay,
There's no lead.
okay.
That would be the water supply versus the
okay.
the drainage.
Gotcha.
And Hartford has a combined system. So in Hartford, when it rains, the water goes down the downspout, gets caught in the gutter, goes down the downspout, goes down under the ground into the sewer system. So it's a combined system. West Hartford is not a combined system. And the problem is that the DEEP from Connecticut and the EPA, federal EPA, have mandated to the MDC that they remove the stormwater from the sanitary sewer and stop these SSOs, sanitary sewer outflows. And those happen every storm. They happen into Trout Brook. They happen into people's basements on occasion when there's backups. So it's a huge, massive problem. So there was 2 studies that the town of West Hartford has done recently. By CDM Smith is the engineering company that did it. And there was 2 of them. They're actually just getting those 2 and they're going to combine them to create a prioritizing list of what projects need to be done. And I asked Dwayne today, I was like, is there a price tag on that? What are we looking at? Yeah. And he said, well, just one of them has a $50 million price tag. Just one. So if there's something also called the integrated plan. I don't want to get off on the MDC too much. I know a lot. I could talk for a while. But the integrated plan is an extremely important plan that the MDC has put together. That's what the DEP and EPA have come together and said, no more SSOs. Stop the water from going. And anyone remember when it would heavy rain, Weathersfield Cove would be a sewage, big sewage pile? That's all started. That's how this all began. If the MDC is unsuccessful in removing the stormwater from the sanitary sewer, and these SSOs continue, after the big tunnel, the $2 billion tunnel, everyone's water bill is now elevated. It's because we're spending all this money on this giant tunnel. When that's done, then they're going to start the second phase. If this integrated plan didn't pass, the second phase would have involved another much larger tunnel and up going north into the meadows in Hartford. But some of the towns have adopted now the integrated plan, which is going to use this money to start to remove the stormwater. And it involves putting sump pumps in people's basements. It involves tying in to, in some cases, the non-existent stormwater system in West Hartford. So
Sounds like it'd probably be a good for another show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to keep
It is,
going.
no, it is really a
Everyone who's
fascinating
bored
topic.
with that stuff. I love it, so I can talk about it all day.
No, I know. It's just
But-
it's so scary. I've got a friend who's in the water business, and he most of his work's on Cape Cod, and Cape Cod is all septic, and they're talking about sewer, and they came up with a price tag. I'll give you one guess for all of Cape Cod what the price tag is, and I'll give you a hint.
$300 million.
It begins with a T.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. $1 trillion to put sewer. I mean, it ain't, this stuff ain't cheap.
No, and just to put a period on that last diatribe that I went on, if the MDC doesn't handle it and doesn't help out, it's going to fall directly on the shoulders of the taxpayers of West Hartford.
And it really is ultimately a $100 million problem.
Oh yeah, it's in excess of $100 million problem.
Yeah.
So that 27 to 35 million, we were all excited. Dwayne said I could find plenty of ways to spend it.
Well, and I think everybody can, but I think that's an important, it's a not enough of a sum of money to fix that whole problem, but it's enough to really be transformative for the
Yes.
town. So it's important to think carefully about how to use it.
Ronnie, I think
Absolutely correct.
I think we covered the MDC.
But part of, how do the American Rescue Plan, 35 million, 25 for the town, 10 for the school system is.
And then there's
as well.
another 12 million that was our share of what the county allocation would be, which I thought that was the money that was in discussion to be allocated to the MDC work, but I could be wrong. That could be an old discussion.
I don't
Yeah.
know those details on that.
And so getting back to the original question about some of the ideas that we've talked about it. We talked about in your show back in April a little bit, is about education and how do we maybe looking at a combined high school, going from 2 to 1. That was put out by Lee and I back in April on your show. And so what are some of those transformative ideas that we can do? We have 50-year-old buildings we continue to throw money into. How can we make a campus in a particular part of town that can actually be a campus for under 3,000 students, and how do we modernize that functionality to provide more resources to the teachers, provide more resources? I think part of the American Rescue Plan is talking with educators is because of I think the kids with the lack of reading or some stuff, they've regressed a little bit. How do we help them understand and get back into it? Can we put more resources into psychologists into town, reading specialists? How do we provide, Tom and the rest of the Board of Ed, some resources to help kids progress and because of the regression that we've gone through in the last year and a half with COVID? So some of those type of things in talking about it. I think we've talked about a lot of things. I mean, St. Bridget's Community Center was one of the things that we're really passionate about. If you look at it in a town our size, is we don't have a community center. We don't have a YMCA anymore. We don't have a Boys and Girls Club. Where can multi-generational young kids go play basketball, hang out, and then folks that are older go to the library, use some other resources, and do it as a community opportunity? I think that's transformative that we're doing right now. And how do we look and envision using Beachland, using that property to really have a new modernized community center What I was really happy about is Elmwood business community, as well as the Faxon branch, they also voted in favor or recognized that. I actually submitted a letter in favor of approving that and moving forward with it. It's one of those things, it's transformative. And how do we look at those type of things? How do we look at a plan for the east side of Troutbrook? There's a lot of people, a lot of effort, a lot of money went into building the Miracle League fields and Little League fields and that whole complex. How do we put a plan together to make it a multi-use, whether it's with a dog park, multi-use field, for places that it can be used as a public space, and looking at consolidating other areas. So
East side of the Yukon property.
east side of Troutbrook.
Former Yukon.
Absolutely. So,
And one of the things that I've been talking about quite a bit is sports facilities. So I have four children in West Hartford Public Schools. Two of them are now moved on into college. But I've been coaching basketball in town for 9 years, and let me tell you, the athletic facilities that we have for a town with the reputation of West Hartford is not really that great. I mean, basketball courts are all the floorboards. There's dead spots, and there's not enough gym space, and 2 teams practicing in one gym. We have no nice indoor soccer facilities. There's no indoor lacrosse or climbing walls or any of that stuff. And for the amount of taxes that we pay in a town of 60,000 people, we should have much better facilities. And the St. Bridget's School, I think, is a great step. And the east side of the Yukon property is also a great step that we need to really exploit for the benefit of the citizens of our town.
other development items that we need to look at, we have aging buildings that we continue to throw money into, is what can we look at to develop some properties to also modernize and combined areas there. So I know Ronnie's had a couple of good ideas too.
Well, I used to teach at Elmwood Community Center. I taught gymnastics there. And it was, you live in this town and all of my kids are into sports and all that kind of stuff. And then you go to the other facilities and you see what's there. And it's embarrassing a lot of times. I mean, when I taught gymnastics, the equipment was not even safe. Like, they didn't have enough money to buy new equipment. And you're in, a nice, West Hartford should be able to, have a little more than that. So firsthand, I was literally teaching in the basement, and it was just a shame. And then, my son has gone through, both my kids went through Little League, went through the football program, and in Little League, thank God the Miracle League was there and the facility was built at that point. But then we would go to other facilities, and he played, all-star baseball and all that kind of stuff. And you go, and he's like, Mom, how come we don't have this? And you go to these towns, and it's just ridiculous.
You
And
been to the one in Barkhamsted? The one that looks like a mini Fenway Park? Yeah. That's an amazing facility.
haven't been the one, which is it Middletown?
Naugatuck has a great facility.
Some of them are just beautiful.
Middletown has some beautiful ones.
And the one
Newington
thing,
too.
so my middle one just actually got back from nationals in Eugene, Oregon. He was one of the kids who went for track. And I mean, the most amazing track program at Hall and Conard. And he was competing in the Olympic Stadium. He said it was amazing. And when you get here and, he's running on our track and we have a decent track, but it's just, there's so many things that we could use our money for and for our kids. And, when you use your money, like you said, it's not sexy to use it on the sewers, but if you use your money on something that you can see, people are really going to rally behind it because they want to see progress. They don't just want to say, I just dumped $27 million into the sewers, I don't see anything. But if you, no, but I'm saying if you, sorry, but if you do that, but yet also, fix Yukon, don't, St. Bridget's, and have a place to go, you want people to be able to enjoy the money you're spending. And they need to see a result. And that's what we're hoping to do.
So I guess what I'm hearing is you're not afraid to spend money.
We're not afraid to spend money, but we're going to do it with a very economical and fiscal lens as well. So it's not that it's an open checkbook, right? But let's look at some things. And when we look at consolidation, so now you have Elmwood and the Faxon Library, that property can be sold to private developers for something. And how do we look at something like that to offset some of that cost? When we talked about the one school in April, and then again last night when we talked about it, is you have 2 properties that can be looked at in parcel and part of development to offset the cost, but also then bring in some, a senior community, over 55 community. We're doing some other things, but let's look at it economically as well, because we have some great ideas, but we have the resources to do it. But let's do this, because I think there's a few other things too. Quality of life. Another bicyclist was hit yesterday on the roads? How do we look and help the town develop? There's this traffic diet, but how do we improve the ability of myself, being a bicyclist, and pedestrians to feel comfortable being out in the streets and doing some stuff? There are other ways, and I have a friend of mine that's a town planner in another town, and he's given me some great ideas on how to look at certain other things to do to help slow down traffic, to do some other items there. So we have a lot of ideas. Part of the other things, we're engaging community leaders. I've already talked with a couple of folks about what a vision could look like for that east side of Trout Brook and the old Miracle League fields and what it could be. So that's the thing, is we'll be able to showcase that this is what it could be, is what we'll invest in. Because you're going to have to invest, but then where can we save, and what we look at things to offset that. Whether it's the new police fire safety center. I know the police and a lot of folks that I've talked to have always requested that. They've outgrown the building here. And how do we look at giving them a modern facility, both to consolidate, but then now you have other firehouses, and I know this is probably one of those things, but we've got to think about ideas. We've got to think outside the box. We've got to look at things that are different and unique, because you've got to change the things that you're doing. So if you do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result, that's Albert Einstein's definition of insanity. So that's kind of what we want to do, and this is kind of the group that we want to provide action, but ideas and solutions to see, and then start a dialogue with the community.
People who have the time to commit to doing the homework, to doing the research, to understanding the problems, and not just showing up and being opposed to viewpoints, but to actually understanding the problem itself and then working together on good
And
solutions.
not doing it partial, just having an idea, seeing it to the end and have a result. Because if you have a lot of little projects that you want to throw money at, that's great, but if nothing gets done, it defeats the purpose,
So that brings up another issue, which I just made a note on. Mayor Cantor, whether you agree or disagree with her policy position, she has treated being mayor of this town as a full-time plus job now for 6 years, 7 years, however long she's been mayor. I mean, she absolutely works her butt off. The other council, both sides, I think everybody's very committed, very engaged. So we had Mayor Cantor on, and I asked her the question, should the council, and it does require a change of the town charter, but should the council be paid, given that their time commitment, they're sacrificing work hours, they're sacrificing so much, should they be paid? Where do you fall on that issue? Should the council be a paid entity in West Hartford?
I'll just jump right in, and I'm going to not answer the question, but I'm going to plug Mayor Cantor. I've never seen anybody more dedicated to anything in my life. She is absolutely amazing. She works tirelessly. She always has the best interest of West Hartford. If I'm running in an election against her, she's my competition, but really she's my ally, because she really works hard for West Hartford. So, we thought about that. And, West Hartford's the largest municipality in New England that is unpaid. So it is a legitimate question. I think
even if and the way I phrase it, the question of Mayor Cantor is, even if you chose to donate your salary to whatever charity
I mean, we certainly haven't had a lack of interest in running without it, right? So there's plenty of people who are interested in helping West Hartford to be altruistic about it. So I don't think you would necessarily get better talent. I think that there's quite a bit of talent that's currently on the council, and certainly candidates who are running, and especially in the A Connecticut Party, there's a significant amount of talent. So I don't know if it's an important distinction to make, that it's a paid or unpaid position. So I just wanted to.
Well, let me give
answer with a non-answer.
But I understand. But let me give you what my rationale was. I feel that there's a whole cohort of people who are unable to run for council and unable to get involved because of their economic circumstance. And if they did run for council and they were going to be paid some sort of stipend, whatever the amount was, it could be the difference between them being able to be active, being involved, and represent their community, and not being able to be involved at all. And I really think there's some truth to that.
You want to take a shot?
Oh, sure, why not? I don't know the answer to that. I mean, it was interesting that you said that, because I was thinking, how does Sherry do it all? And she's
70
everywhere.
hours a week, 80
exactly.
hours a week.
She's a clone.
She must
I do
be.
too.
Because, I run my business, and I'm there, 80 hours a week, and it's never enough. So I don't know the answer. I think it would be nice if you possibly could get paid, and maybe people who, but I don't know if not getting paid deters people from doing that. But I don't know. But honestly, I think if you just ask people if that's, and find out, because I don't know the answer to that.
I think where I interpreted your question to be leading was maybe it would be more a diverse representation.
Oh, yeah, no question.
So there may be some people who wouldn't give it the thought because they're like, I'm not going to volunteer my time, but if there was some money involved.
Well, or their socioeconomic circumstance doesn't permit it. I think that's the more.
That's a when you start to look at it from that perspective, it definitely changes that discussion a little bit. And I guess you'd have to. I don't know if it's worth the experiment to offer up the pay to try to attract those types of people who may not ordinarily run, because I think you're still going to get the same types of motivated people, regardless of whether they're getting paid or not, regardless of their demographic. Even though I do see that it may allow the opportunity for a person who says, you know what, instead of a part-time job at night with, I'm gonna work for my local government and I'll make, I don't know, $5,000 or $3,000. I mean, what would the pay be? Something small.
That's a whole other issue. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But so I definitely think that opening up the opportunity to people who might need that money or who would, an underserved population could have representation potentially. So.
Because it is a time commitment that we're all making, both to run and then also when elected.
And it's thankless. Let's be honest. You run and people just beat you up all the way. You get beaten from one side, you get beaten up the other side, then you're in office and then you're not getting anything done.
Are you going to dissuade them?
So
The other thing is though, there's plenty of opportunities. If you want to be involved, there's other opportunities to be involved that maybe isn't a big time commitment.
Right.
And, speaking just from the middle school, we've all had kids in the middle school and, running the PTO, do you know how hard it is to even get volunteers to even just do the littlest tiny thing? It's very, very hard to do that. So if I paid, I don't know, I don't know, but it's hard to get people to get out of their own lives and do something else. And I don't know, maybe an incentive for money might be it, maybe it wouldn't. I don't know
Mark,
the answer to it.
I cut you off. I'm sorry. I do want to hear your thoughts.
It's a great
on this.
question. I actually don't know.
I didn't give it any thought. I would love to learn more about it and what some other towns, maybe of our size, if they do it, why and how. So it's an answer of I don't know, and I need to learn more about it and how it would affect. So, but it's a great question. But there's a lot of work. There's a lot of tireless, thankful work that you do, and work that you put in to understand the issues. And if you're doing it, you're also wanting to reach out to the community and get input, right? So it's one of the things that we've been doing and I've been doing, talking to Park Road business owners, what would they like in that part of town, and going around and just asking a lot of questions, but being actively engaged. I remember 5 years ago, and I know we're going to get off track here for a second, but I went 5 years ago when I was running for state senate, knocking on doors and doing that stuff. And a gentleman, I knocked on his door, heard my 30-second elevator pitch on who I am and everything else, and asked questions like, what would you like to see? Well, why don't you come around all the time? And I'm like, that's an interesting perspective. I mean, if I'm running for office, I'm just door knocking there. And so part of it is I stayed involved after losing the election and staying actively involved, and ended up becoming vice chair and then chairman of the RTC to help give back to the community. So I can continue to go out and talk with people and understand what their issues are and how they feel that we can do a better job at the town level. And so it's how do you keep on doing that and staying actively involved. But it's something you want to do. You want to be passionate about and give back to the community.
I have another question, but I feel like I'm dominating. Do you have any
no,
questions? Am I
I'm-
good? All right,
I'm
so
good.
I want to ask, now we're talking candidates, ask candidates across the room. Let's start. What is your number one issue? What is your big idea? What's your number one issue if you get elected?
I have two that are equal: sewers and sports facilities.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Roni?
That's a good question, because there's a lot of little ones that I think I want to work on. I think that one is the Yukon facility is working on that too. My friends live right across the street, and it just pains me. Just to see it. I just hope that we can do something with that. And the other one is the panhandlers, to be honest with you. That is just, I work in Blueback Square. I walk to work every single day.
And do you live near the center?
Well, I live 2 miles away,
Okay.
but I have to walk because my car was stolen in front of my house about 2 months ago. And that's probably should be the third topic, is that my car was stolen in front of my house. And apparently it was my problem. So I don't have a car now. And I walk to work back and forth. But on my way to work, every single day, it's the same thing, and I have to either cross the street or go out of my way to avoid being asked for money constantly. And that's just not how I want to walk to work every day.
How would you approach that problem if you're elected?
That's a great question, and I don't know what the right answer is.
That's a very complicated
It's a
question.
very
I know it is.
complicated question, and we've gone through it multiple different ways. There is no law against panhandling in West Hartford. But it would be a discussion to find other communities who have dealt with this problem and who have successfully dealt with it. And I don't know, but I would really want to rely on everyone else to figure out a solution. Because I've never had to deal with that before. I mean, it's never been a problem in our community before, but for me, it affects me every single day walking to work.
Yeah.
And so I think people are going to be more apt to want to work on issues that affect them personally. And so the Yukon property, the panhandlers, and the massive amount of car theft that is in our area now. So,
Mark?
John, Roni, first of all, thanks for having us and being a part of your first show back in the studio.
Feels good.
So, which
It
is
does,
great.
it does, feels great.
So, I can't really pinpoint one specific issue, but I will point out to one, I'll call it category, and it's quality of life initiatives. And it encompasses a number of different things. Well, first of all, I want to be a part of helping think about the community center and how do we envision that and work with the community where it's multi-generational and it's generational transformation for our town itself. I want to think about areas that how we can bring the not just north-south of West Hartford, but it's all of West Hartford and communities together. And how do we look at those initiatives, whether it is, I'll call it traffic calming, because so there's a couple of studies that are out there about using roundabouts in a number of different communities. They've seen an impression about that one. As I mentioned, my friend who's a town planner showed me that information and how it helps become more pedestrian, more bike friendly, slows down traffic. There's a lot of speeding there. Our police force, they do a great job, but they're asked to do a lot, whether it's because of the state, the accountability bill, but we need to help provide the chief with a lot of resources, whether it relates to domestic violence. Should the police be doing that type of stuff? How do we look at some of those type of things where it's more community-based and bringing that back? I think a couple of things that Lee and I have talked about and been on record for too is development. Let's look at some strategic areas of town that that need development, where it's parking lot just sitting there and developers want to develop it. How do we look at ways to helping them create apartment buildings that are for the 23 to 30-year-olds that want to be in a vibrant community? And how do we look at that? How do we make a pedestrian-friendly center? When I say that, let's look at closing down LaSalle Road, and we've talked about it. I mean, I've been on record before about doing that one. Those are the issues that are really important to me. That how do we help develop Park Road? How do we help look at the Elmwood community and helping develop theirs and modernize those parts of town and not just there? And I've already talked about the schools. Schools are a bigger one. I mean, for me, it's like going with Jeff Bezos to the edge of the Earth today in the orbit. You know, how do we look beyond that to come up with some solution that actually brings our community together? And if you look at the school system, we do fantastic. We're in the top 10. Why can't, let's help them get into let's get us top 5. And how do some of those resources that we can get to doing that one? So I'm answering your question with not any one specific. There are a lot of those, but there's that one category that means a lot to me because it also goes into the community about the kids, our seniors, and helping develop that. And there's a lot of projects that are on board, and I want to be involved in helping that and how it transforms our town 50 years, 75 years. When we're both gone, our kids can look back and say, we did something, and how do I make my kids be more actively involved in what their community that they live in?
Good answer, Mark.
Back to what we wanted. Back to what we were talking about earlier. We want history to look at things accurately and favorably, and we all want to do our part. So, Roni, any more questions for our guests?
No, I don't think so. One thing I will be doing probably next month, we'll be sending out a questionnaire to all of you and any other candidates, actually candidates of all parties, with the same exact questions. So we'll be asking about your platform, about your experience, your platform, some very standard questions, but a chance to also add your own free association, freely scripted answer. So I look forward to seeing some of those in the responses, and we'll publish all those on wehow.com.
Great. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, really appreciate it. This has been a great. I've always enjoyed interviewing with you, John. Your questions you ask them in such a way it makes people feel very comfortable to give good answers.
Well, we enjoy having you on. I'm very lucky that Ronnie's trusted me to kind of do this with her, and we enjoy the show. So next week we are going to have on, we are inviting, I've got to use that word because we haven't officially done it yet, but we're going to invite all of the candidates, other than the three of you, sorry, you've had your turn. But we're going to invite the candidates on. We're going to do the show virtually, just simply because of the large number of candidates.
So the
we're gonna
endorsed Republicans and Democrats who will be endorsed as of the end of this week.
Yeah, the conventions are happening on Thursday for both parties.
Is it Thursday? I thought
Yeah.
one was today.
Oh, I might be wrong. Then I apologize. If the GOP is today, I apologize. But I know the Democrat is on Thursday. So
They have to get them done by the 27th of July.
yes, it's amazing how many state and national rules apply. I've learned, at the local level, the compliance is a big deal with this stuff. So.
It is, and not to get off track, we don't have to do that because we're a campaign committee.
Right.
And once, if the voters of West Hartford vote for us and we become an official party, then we'll have to go through the same process and filing, which we're ready to do.
All right. Well, thank you all for coming on.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Great to have you. Ronnie, we have a couple minutes. I meant to lead with this, and I apologize I didn't. Do you have any updates on we had a big breaking news story. Do you want to talk about that for a
Yeah,
moment?
so actually, it kind of goes hand in hand with what the other Ronnie
Yeah.
talked about.
Yeah.
So a vehicle was stolen by a 16-year-old from an auto, I think it's called Premier Auto. I'm not really actually sure what that business is, but it's on New Britain Avenue. There was a 2-year-old inside the vehicle. A teen stole the vehicle. Police found out about it. They were able to use stop sticks to slow it down, and then that vehicle ended up crashing into another car on South Main Street, just north of the intersection of Park Road and Park and Sedgwick.
yeah.
Park and Sedgwick and South Main all come together. The suspects fled. The police were able to apprehend the teen. They have not said whether it's a male or female yet, so I'm calling it that person they.
Is the 2-year-old okay?
The 2-year-old, in the meantime, had been dropped off in front of another business before the crash occurred. I'm not sure how much time ensued between the time that the car was stolen and the police actually, and the crash occurred. I don't think it was very long, but the teen must have noticed and dropped off that child, and the child is back with their parents. But they ran into another car. There were 3 people in that car. 2 of them were minors. All of those people are okay. The suspect was taken to the hospital. Somebody questioned why that person's called a suspect, and you have to be called a suspect until you are actually, convicted. So while it's clear that this actually happened, as far as the police are concerned, they're still called a suspect, and you still say alleged until it
Until
goes
they're
through the court
convicted.
system,
Yep,
right?
until they're
Exactly.
convicted. Yep.
So in any case, it was South Main Street was closed for a while. I live actually right up the street, so I heard all the sirens and was able to get to the scene shortly after it had happened. And
So, I think about, my kids are a little older, I think kind of line, in early 20s, late teens, and, how easy it is to think as a parent when you have that 1 or 2-year-old in the car who's asleep in the car, you're running in to grab that cup of coffee, you're going to be out of the car for 30 seconds, and, it's a tough lesson, and thank God,
well, I'm not even sure how this
okay.
happened, or even
Yeah.
where how that child came to be in the car and where the driver of the person who was supposed to be driving the car was. So we don't know anything about that. I don't even want to make any
Yeah.
assumptions whatsoever. The person could have been standing in the doorway and somebody stole the car. So we really don't know. But it was a major event. It closed down South Main Street for a while. I think it's back open now.
So stay tuned to weha.com.
It's been a busy week.
Ronnie will have
Yeah.
updates as the night progresses, hopefully all good news. And Rick, Ronnie, and Mark, thank you so much for coming on. We really enjoyed having you. For Ronnie Newton, I'm John Lyons, weha.com Roundtable, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.